Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 2, Episode 5, Chapter 27. In this chapter/episode, depending on who you want to talk to about it, you guys, there's so much that happens, but let's be real. All I want to talk about is Britney Spears. I'm so excited. Britney's here. Britney is here. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Natalia for commissioning this episode. And Natalia, if you're out there, thank you so much for the support. Appreciate you a lot. You guys, this was so much fun. This episode was it was so emotional, and it got me in a couple moments just really, really invested, and I am always here for normally the characters that tend to be the rocks of sensibility, getting stoned or drunk without necessarily intending that to happen. Those are some of my favorite bits. In Parks and Rec, one of the best bits is the snake hole episode, which is when Ron Swanson gets really, really drunk and has a tiny hat on and dances, and it's just fucking priceless. So having Alba be stoned here is very, very funny. And, being able to act stoned in a way that's convincing is tricky, because a lot of people will sort of overplay the space out aspect, oh yeah, the really dopey sort of, but in my experience, the thing that tends to happen is the giggles really bad. And we'll get there. But I also really, really enjoyed that moment as well. So we start off, flashback, of Zoe trying to talk to her grandmother about going to a restaurant. I think it's called La Rosa. And her mother isn't answering her through the door initially, but eventually just says, not tonight. And this is all happening at the same time as we are seeing little tiny Jane out in the hallway, drawing on the wall with a marker of some kind, a magic marker. And I really remember doing things like this. I was old enough to know better for sure. And my mom was cool about it, because she was oh, she doesn't know, she's little. But I was old enough to know, really. I still remember that. But you don't find out until later that this day was really significant, because it was the anniversary of Alba's husband's death. And she is in her room looking at his picture, as we find out later, weeping, struggling a lot with grief. And what Zoe is suggesting to go to this restaurant is them celebrating his life by going to a place that used to be one of his favorite places to go to. And later on, the takeaway that Alba has is basically that she should have been there more for Xiomara, instead of letting herself get completely absorbed by her grief for her husband, because this wound up being the day that Xiomara took the fall for this idiot boy that she was dating's stealing a ring from a jewelry store. So while for most of the episode, Alba is sort of feeling put upon that Xiomara has this on her record that's potentially ruining, it hasn't yet, but potentially ruining her chances at a green card. When she circles back around to the circumstances of that day, it seems like she's really taking a lot of responsibility for the fact that Shamara was in the position for this to happen to begin with, and that if she herself, Alba, had not been so indulgent, is the word I think she would use, with her grief, that Shao wouldn't have wound up in this position at all, and we wouldn't be having this difficulty now. And while I'm not entirely sure that I fully agree with taking that kind of responsibility, I do kind of like that as a device, of just well, if I hadn't been so self-absorbed, then maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. It's a tough thing because being self-absorbed when it comes to grief is a really tricky proposition. And I like the fact that they make it clear Shamara isn't ignoring his death. She's trying to do something to celebrate him herself, suggesting this restaurant. So it really kind of does work in terms of Alba feeling like I dropped the ball, because her daughter wanted to be part of this. It was her father. It was somebody she cared about, and her mother wouldn't reach out. And excuse me. Oh, I feel like I just inhaled a dust bunny. But her mother, instead of involving her daughter in celebrating his memory, just isolates herself. And, it's just one of those things that it's ideally, yeah, you would behave better, but also I'm not going to hold it too much against you because let's be real. Grieving is so hard, and we all don't act like our best selves necessarily. I would love to say that I always was balanced, and God knows that's not fucking true. And, anyway, I really liked this little subplot here, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. So we have a thing where, you guys, this killed me so bad. Jane wakes up and she's walking on air, thinking about how Michael's the one she wants to be with. Michael is really feeling himself he fucking nailed this whole thing, that it's in the bag. And we see him walking down the street past this amazing, huge, graffiti wall art mural thing. I don't even know what you want to call it, but he is walking past a scooter or something. Yeah, it's a Vespa. He literally leaps over it, just look, I know that this is something that people can do. Your hamstrings, you work on that, right? Explosive movement. Anytime I see people being able to jump like this, I am blown away. Never in my life, even when I was in my best shape, could I ever. I also have very short legs, but even so, I just can't. And later on, he comes up against this group of people who are dancing, break dancing on the street in a way that's only ever in TV and movies. And he runs up the wall and does a flip and then keeps walking. And it was just genuinely an adorable moment. It's so weird because he's a cop. So, I don't want to be encouraging this. But also I was that was pretty fun. And that's all happening in the midst of Rafael talking to his sister. Why does Jane even like this guy? You guys, I'm just going to say this once. Rafael, you better do more to try and win Jane over than just be Mateo's father. Okay? That's not all you... he's basically acting the fact that Jane would ever consider anybody but him is her, quote, throwing their family away. That's the wording he literally uses. And I just can't get over how much he thinks that he should default be the one because of that. It was an accident that she got pregnant at all, sir. You guys didn't agree to have a child because you care so much about each other. This is a medical accident. And just because it happened to be your sperm and you care about her doesn't mean anything. I know that you think it should mean everything. I understand even in some ways why you think that. But you have got to take a step back and be fucking real with yourself, because it is giving incel a little bit. And like, not really, but a little bit of like, I'm here and I'm doing the bare minimum, so I should get the prize, you know? Like, I just don't fucking see it for Rafael lately. And I love, like, what we find out is that he turned off the baby monitor and it was on before she came out. So that explains why it looked like it was off, but it hadn't been. Later on, Michael thinks that the baby monitor is responsible for him being found out with Nadine and that whole thing. And he lays that at Rafael's feet. I'll tell you what, kids, I was fully prepared to believe Rafael had turned him in until I saw his face and was like, okay, he's definitely like, he didn't know anything about this, you know? But I really, really had a moment of, oh shit, that would make total sense actually. And I didn't like it. I didn't want it to be true, but I was willing to believe it because frankly, I don't really like Rafael's attitude. And he says something in this episode too to Jane about how Michael's shady and you know it. Michael's shady in like a way that I actually approve of, if I'm being really honest. And so here's the thing. And I don't know if anybody who's like in the audience, I think April's the only one who's here right now live in the chat. But if there's anybody listening after the fact who wants to help me out with this as well. The thing that Michael did with letting Nadine get a head start, he did this because he believed that Nadine was being forced to cooperate against her will, right? With Sinrostro. And then he finds out that that isn't actually true, that she was voluntarily helping. And I think the reasoning for him believing that she was like, that this was voluntary is because she was part of the whole thing with his son being abducted. Now, this is where I kind of feel like I missed something. I didn't get that her being involved in the abduction was meant to be seen as like proof positive that she was a totally willing participant. I just thought she was being leaned on still. That it was just, the situation hadn't changed in any particular way. It was simply, you know, because like why would it be, the logic didn't make sense to me that she would be here without being forced now, when before it took, like, do you think that now, once she gets found out, Sinrostro just stops using her? Is like, and the fact that she's still participating means that it had to have been a voluntary thing. I just didn't really get the logic here. So, you know, by the end of this episode, she fucking crops up again. And I don't really know what to do with this, because at this point, I think he needs to just kill her. Like, she's very tedious. I'm tired of her. But there is just an assumption that he makes, I think when he talks to Jane and he's like, she said she was being forced and I believed her. And I was like, what do you mean you believed her? Like, you're saying that like I'm an idiot and I fell for it. I don't see how you think that was a lie. I'm not understanding where he's drawing that conclusion from. April says, yes, I didn't get that Nadine was not coerced. Okay, good. That's not just me then. That makes me feel better, because I was like, I watch this, like, you know, there are some shows that you watch with like half attention. I don't do that with shows that I cover, or at least I try not to. And if I find that I am, I rewind it. I didn't feel like I was missing anything. Granted, you guys know that I missed the fucking Sinrostro reveal with Rose at the end of that one episode, because I happened to like look away from the screen while she walked away, because it's a very brief little thing. mea culpa. But nevertheless, I was like, I don't know. I just feel like there wasn't anything said like that would make it so clear. Oh, she really just like tried to pluck at my heartstrings, but she was full of shit. So anyway, all of this to say, Rafael being like, Michael is shady, and you know that. He's shady in that he like let his longtime partner get like, who had been coerced, get a head start when she was put between a rock and a hard place. And what the fuck was she supposed to do? I have a really hard time condemning him for that. And I don't believe for a moment that Rafael wouldn't also have done something like this. I just don't buy it. Him acting like he's got a sort of moral high ground here, I just don't see it. And the fact that he says he's shady and he has it out for me, that's the second thing. He has it out. You have it out for him. Do you hear yourself? Like, nothing Rafael says about Michael isn't also applicable to him in some way. That's really it for me. So this whole episode, I feel like I'm meant to be sort of seeing his side of things, and I'm just not. I'm just tired of him and his whining. Like, it feels like whining. And when he is with his sister, I could not stop laughing because, like, he says something about how he just unplugged the baby monitor after hearing that she was going to pick Michael and pretended that it hadn't been plugged in the whole time and that he hadn't heard it. And she says, oh, yeah, I would have done the same thing. And when she says that, he kind of like gives her a look. And I appreciated it because that is something that should really make you stop and go, if there is somebody in your life who is a straight up mess all the time, endlessly messy. Sorry, that's my dog over here. And they are telling you they would have done the same thing that you did regarding some like high stress choice that you made. You really do got to stop and be like, ooh, you know, it's not necessarily always a sure, like, indicator that you did the wrong thing. People who are in mess can still sometimes make correct decisions here and there. But I do really think that once she said, I would have done the same thing, he should have reevaluated absolutely everything. Because, like, I get it. I get it. She just talked about this amazing epic kiss. Your feelings are hurt. Your hopes are dashed. This image that you had in your head of what your family was going to look like is starting to fall apart. And I really do understand not wanting to talk about it in the moment. But I also feel like you've got to be an adult here, sir. And just be like, look, I heard it. And not... He winds up basically telling her about it anyway, so that kind of is him taking it back. But I just could not help but laugh because Luisa, she's just never really out here making choices that I think anybody should be making. But yeah, she's the one that keeps trying to tell him that he needs to stall for time. Her suggestion, and I was so concerned he was going to go for this. He doesn't, thank God. Her suggestion initially is that he tell Jane his cancer is back and play for time that way. You guys, that is the most... I'm so glad he doesn't listen to her. I'm so glad. When he first hears her say, I would have done the same thing, and he doesn't seem to stop dead in his tracks, I was like, oh God, does this mean he's going to take her fucking advice and do this insane thing? He doesn't. Because, like, if it ever turned out that, which it would, you don't get away from this. Jane would find out that he was lying about his cancer being back. She is too concerned and too involved to not eventually find out. She would never forgive him for that. It would never, ever be the way lying that you still have cancer. And then ultimately she would find out as well the reason why he was lying. To just simply play for time? I doubt it. No, I'm sorry. That's that. That's a wrap on that. Like, there would be no future for them ever again if he did that. So yeah, that's just like, this whole bit is just, there's a lot happening. There's a lot. It's a big mess. So we find out about the filing of the paperwork for the, what do you call it? The green card. Alva is over here wearing this like blue, what's it? Just like a blue pleated blouse and a red cardigan sort of thing over it. She's almost in red, white, and blue. Good call, in my opinion. I liked that. And this is when we find out about the felony charge. And it turns out that Shamara hadn't realized it was a felony. She thought that because it was just shoplifting, it only counted as a misdemeanor. But because it turns out, because the price of the item was over $400, that counts as a felony instead. I just really want us all to take a moment here and really think about the fact that the value of what you're stealing being above $400 can turn this shoplifting into a felony, and how like insane that actually is. Like, you know what I'm saying? First of all, when it comes to most things, my whole energy is, I never saw it. If I see anybody stealing anything, I'm really just going to be like, welp, because there are very few situations in which a business that somebody's shoplifting from doesn't have insurance coverage for whatever it is that's being taken. So I just personally feel no investment in that at all. If we're talking about a tiny mom and pop store and somebody's a chronic shoplifter and I know them and I'm aware that they can afford things and they're, even then I'm just probably going to be like, I don't know, none of my business. Stealing, unless it's from other people who are also struggling, I am never ever going to have that like strong a reaction to. Stealing from other people is a completely different situation than stealing from a business. But just the fact that she was 18, she agrees to take this fall, and it's a felony, and this could interfere with her mother who's trying to become a legal citizen. Like, our whole shit is so fucked up. And I love how the show takes every opportunity that it can when something like this comes up and they're asking the question like, well, is this really that serious? Isn't there a way around it? The person they're speaking to says like, well, it's hard to say because immigration laws are constantly changing. And the subtitles come up and it's hashtag vote, hashtag vote, hashtag vote in red, white, and blue, which I do really, really appreciate. Like, y'all, we all need to be like, this is something that a friend of mine has been really working on, and I'm going to plug them for a second. Build Track 50 is a website that my friend Karen runs. She started it, and she is attempting to make following certain laws easier. And it's mainly geared towards businesses that have a vested interest in certain laws that are being passed, but it's definitely usable for individuals as well. And there are in place for this website ways that you can like track certain laws, updates that are made, things that are brought to the floor by state, by representative, by issue. And you can do this on the state level or the federal level. And it's something that I really want to start getting more involved in, because there was a time where I was way more involved and I was like making phone calls, and this was a weekly thing that we would do where we would be on the air live and we would call our representatives about an issue of the week. And it's really, and I understand this, it's really discouraging because it can feel like you're just screaming into a void. Nobody's hearing you and it's not doing anything. But we have got to find our way past that. And I don't really know how. It's the sort of thing that I can understand in theory that this needs to happen, but people are so deeply discouraged and demoralized by the way that our system works that I can't blame them for just shrugging and going, what's the point? I understand where that's coming from very well, but we got to find some way. But anyway, so this all leads to this guy, what is his name? Zed? That he was the guy that Shamara took the fall for, and she needs to track him down. And they wind up he's on rollerblades, hanging out by the ocean front in like a tie-dye shirt. He looks like he sleeps on the street. I don't think he does, but he definitely looks like a mess. And he doesn't go by Zed anymore. I go by Jon Snow because, like him, I watch the wall. And apparently this like mural here is his masterpiece. And he says, I also sell a little cocaine. Get it? Snow. So she proposes to him that he come forward. And even when Jane says it's past the statute of limitations, so it wouldn't be like you would go away for it or anything like that, he refuses to come forward. Shamara gets so mad, and Jane has to like pull her aside and speak to him one-on-one for a moment. And he gives her this THC chocolate bar, 70% cacao, and she's about to just give it back, and then it's just like, you know what, I have to humor him, so I am going to hold on to it. But yeah, I totally get why you don't want to talk to a judge. Who doesn't have a few hobbies they don't want law enforcement to know about? So the thing is this, you won't get locked up or anything because the statute of limitations is up, and it's not that big a deal. And he says, yeah. But I got this strict policy. If the police ask me anything, I know nothing, like Jon Snow. And he rollerblades backwards away from her. We find out in this convo, by the way, that she was engaged to this guy. And I love this little like detail on top of everything. I really, really do. Y'all, look, there are times where I see myself in Shamara a lot. And I've talked about it before, but I just got to reiterate, when I was in high school, I was a horny bitch, you guys, okay? I couldn't get enough dick. And I was like seeing one dude steadily, but we were fucking all the time. And definitely it was like purely physical, but I definitely thought it was love because I was a fucking child. And we 100% thought we were going to end up getting married. And I just thank my lucky stars every goddamn day that I never took it the extra step and did something permanent. Because, oh my God, that guy would have, like, Zed is much more of like a stoner hippie type than that boyfriend was. But that boyfriend was just as much of a pitiful loser type. And I look, just saying. I'm just saying I can understand the situation that she found herself in and the ways in which that shame continues to follow her. And that's why she hasn't told anybody about this. Like, I can't blame her for keeping this to herself. I just can't do it. So anyway, so, all right, let's bounce back here. Cause I'm kind of, jumping all over the place. Let's talk about, Petra and Milos convincing her to marry him. So when we start this episode, the last time that they had been talking, she was very firmly in the, it's never going to happen, buddy, drop it. And we sort of end the episode thinking she'll get out of it. And then this episode begins and you're like, oh no, because it's really looking like maybe he has found a way to back her into a corner here, which I hate for her, but also I can understand how effective this could be, Well, he ends up like telling her she agrees as long as he won't expect sex from her, which he's like, oh, well, for now, but you might change your mind. And she's like, no, but I promise I won't change my mind. He's like, you might. And she's just like, oh my God. And then also, if he agrees that it's only going to be like 1 year, and I just want that in writing, you know, like there's no reason to think this guy is going to hold up his end of things. Saying, you know, it's just, we'll just do it for a year because you know that I don't have feelings for you. And he says, yet, girl, he is so certain that you are not going to want out of this by the time a year is up. You have got to get something more firmly in place. I really need you, Petra, to like, you know, be a little bit more aggressive about ensuring there is some way to hold him to this. But she doesn't do that, and I understand that. So then he's like, I need you to help me pick the band for our wedding. And she's thinking they're going to go down to City Hall and it's going to be nothing. And it turns out that he has this whole idea that they're going to have a pretty decent size, like small is a relative term here, a pretty decently sized wedding in the hotel, in the Marbella, which later on we discover that there is a particular reason why he has things set up this way. In the moment, it just seems like he's being really obtuse about the whole thing and wanting to make her uncomfortable almost on purpose, as if he could strong arm her into having feelings for him again. But then you find out at the end of the episode that he was smuggling fucking grenades into the building using this wedding as a front, which I really liked that reveal because it made a lot of things like make sense. You know what I'm saying? There just was a point where I was sort of like, I don't feel like I understand this guy's game. But over the course of the episode, you find out that he's behind a lot of online scams. So that's his whole deal. And now I feel like I'm getting a better grasp on who he is. But yeah, he's like, I need you to like help me pick a band because we need somebody for the opening act. And she says, the opening act? Well, who's the main act? And then we see Britney Spears turn and stare into the camera. You guys, I am like obsessed. Do you understand me? Obsessed with this turn of events. I love this so much. When she turns around, I really thought it was just a joke for the moment. I thought it was going to be her turning to the camera and then our narrator would be like, just kidding. And we would find out like, oh no, you know, he tried to get her, but he didn't succeed or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And instead, Britney is this like ongoing bit in the episode and it's so good. Oh my God. So full disclosure, everything that's been happening with Britney Spears and her conservatorship and then getting out of that and then people like being on her case for the way that she's been behaving on her like Instagram and TikTok or whatever it is. I just really want to go on the record because so many people are like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have let her out of that conservatorship. Look at how she's acting. How she's acting is like a person trying to have a fucking good time for the first time in their lives. Like, I genuinely am so offended by the attitude that people have where we're pretending that her being cringy with her dancing on camera means that she doesn't deserve to run her own life. Like, I know people are being quippy and they think it's funny, but it's truly part of an overall misogynistic theme that we have with women, that they are not capable of running their own lives because we question their judgment and for reasons that we would never question a man's judgment. And it makes me so angry. Secondly, I did not read the book she wrote, but one of my closest friends has read it. Candace, if you're listening, hi. And Candace was like sending me bits out of it every now and then as she was reading it because she was getting so angry. And it turns out that Britney's father and her grandfather each had a woman that they wanted to get out of the picture committed. And this was like a common practice. So her being put under conservatorship falls right in line with that means of controlling women. So I just am like, unless something truly monstrous comes out that Britney herself has done, I'm always going to stand for Britney forever. I just can't help but see her as a complete victim of circumstances that people around her trying to take advantage of her. And seeing her in this role, it was just so much fun. It felt like she got to have fun in a way that, you know, I know that this is a script written. I know that probably the people controlling her put her into the position of doing this. So like my reading this as her getting to let loose is probably inaccurate. But I could not help but just be delighted by the whole vibe of this. So she's in this like Tiffany blue shorts and tank top with silver heels. And then she's got her backup dancers who are wearing white pleated pants and tank top with a matching Tiffany blue sash and white combat boots with and they're following her around all the time and making the same movements as her all the time. It's really giving like Pitch Perfect a little bit almost. And we have this great moment where Jane sees her in the lobby, and Britney turns to her and is like, "Hi, what's your name? There's something about you. I can tell you have rhythm. Would you like to dance?" And they do a little like dance to Toxic. And I just keep thinking about the actress that plays Jane getting to literally dance beside Britney Spears. And that would be so amazing. I often think about this. Like, can you imagine what it would be like if you like got to be one of Beyonce's backup dancers? Like the pride, I mean, forget it. I would just, and getting to do something like this, even on a show, even if it's like a silly little bit, I am sorry. It's fantastic. I will say though, Britney, you have got to get rid of those extensions, girl. Those blue extensions. It's giving Christina Aguilera. It's not your look. I do not like it. It's not flattering on you. The coloring is wrong. And also there's just a sort of like, there's something about it that ages her. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't like the look. However, of course she looks amazing. Like there's just no way around that because she just do. And it turns out, yeah, this is going to be the act. And she, like, what Milos paid, I can't imagine. There are people out there that can do this, you guys, that have the kind of money that they can get an A-lister to just come and perform privately. You know, like, I can't imagine that. Having the money to just be like, "Hey, B, you want to come and sing to my people?" Like, what? Really? Oh my God, forget it. So anyway, this is so good, you guys. It turns out that there's a whole thing here because Jane takes a selfie, tries to, and send it to her mom, who, by the way, is wearing a skirt the exact same color as Britney's outfit. And she's telling Rogelio, "Oh my God, Jane just texted me. Britney Spears is in the hotel. I think this is her elbow." And Rogelio is about to eat a sandwich and he stops dead and says, "Excuse me? She's in the hotel? Good. Then she will finally have to face me." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And he says, "We're in a little bit of a feud. A big feud, actually. I don't know why I'm downplaying it. I'm done protecting." And he says, "I'm done protecting," and you guys, the delivery of this line, "Britney Spears." It's so funny. Oh my God. When they decided to make it that the two of them had beef, I was cackling. This was such a great move. And I love it. Tamara being like, "Are you joking? Why haven't you talked about it before? Lord knows you've dropped Gloria Estefan's name enough." I do not drop her name. I mention people like Gloria Estefan, Alejandro Fernandez, and Oprah Winfrey because they happen to be dear friends of mine. Then how'd you and Britney meet? It was years ago. I went to an awards show wearing a look Britney liked. And it shows him in this like full one-piece red pleather like jumpsuit. You guys. She expressed her admiration for the outfit and I generously went home to change, allowing her to debut it in a video. She was touched. We became dear friends. Regular friends. We swapped concealer tips, career advice. When she kissed Madonna at the MTV Music Awards, that was my idea. I pitched it to Enrique Iglesias, but he was feeling sick and he didn't want me to get sick. Anyway, the point is, we were close. And then she betrayed me. And it turns out that what it is... Hey, you stop bothering my controller here. The dog is trying to chew on the little like keypad here that gets my standing desk to the standing position. And if he does that, he will have my entire desk move while I'm recording. Not to mention the fact that he would be doing it by biting it, which might keep it in the standing position permanently because he's broken it. So I'm going to need you to stop it, buddy. But yeah, so this whole, now that she's here, she can no longer avoid me. Well, it turns out that the thing that Britney did, it's so good. She acts like she doesn't know his name when they run into each other. It's so funny. Oh my God, y'all. I love it. She's like, I'm so sorry I forgot your name. And I like to know everyone on the crew. I don't believe you. It doesn't make sense. Why would I do that? Can you think of any reason why I would do that? And when she said that, I was like, okay, something Rogelio did. Like, she clearly feels he deserves this, and he clearly doesn't know what the fuck it was that he did, or has chosen to forget it. I was willing to go more on the like, I assume usually that Rogelio like lacks self-awareness to such a degree that if somebody is accusing him of a thing and he is claiming ignorance, that he did something that was truly like awful to anybody else, but benefited him in such a material way that he is like, I don't get why you would think I would do anything else. But anyway, he says that I was emerging from your shadow and you didn't like it. And she just like at that moment decides to walk away from him and calls him Rogelio. Oh my God, you guys. Her backup dancers walking with her and doing like the arm movements, turning their head at the same time as her. I swear to God. So what we find out it is that there was this awards ceremony where he was reading a teleprompter, and the winner of the category of Hot Latin Star of the Year, a category I wouldn't know anything about, being neither hot nor a star. Wait, what? And she stops and she takes the award from him and says, that's okay, let me do it. Everybody gets nervous. And Jane is looking at it like, it seems like she was coming to your rescue. And he says, well, that's just what she wanted it to look like. I was at this point on his side because I felt like, Jane, if he thinks that this was a deliberate snub, I know that Rogelio tends to like overreact, but this felt very much like she seemed to know what was going on there, and the way that she stepped in, I don't know. I was a bit like, Jane, I want you to take him more serious. Like, he's, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want her to dismiss this. So she finally goes to talk to Britney herself. And Britney says what happened was that he backstabbed and betrayed me like the backstabbing betrayer that he is. Ask him what happened last time we went shopping in Mexico City. So she asks him and he says, I forgot all about that. I tipped off the paparazzi. I was a C+ lister at the time, and I knew that being photographed with Britney would help my career. And this is when Britney pops in, because they're doing like a video call. And she says, how could you do that? And he says, I'm so sorry, Brit. Now that I'm mega famous, I understand what a mega transgression that was. I'm so ashamed. And I totally get why you changed the teleprompter. And she says, I didn't change it, though. I was just sad about your betrayal, and the teleprompter guy overheard me, and I think he was trying to impress me. He was a real sweetie, you know? And so, yeah, he says, from the bottom of my broken heart, I'm sorry. And I hope that our friendship could be as strong as it once was. And you guys, I desperately want her to be a regular on the show. And I do not think this is going to happen. But I want what he said here to mean that this is like a thing that we're going to have now all the time, is Britney Spears just fucking on the show. I would love it. She's not a good actress. It's a stupid bit to have happening all the time. I get it. I don't care. I still want it. I just think this is so fun. I love it so much. So anyway, that's what's going on with Rogelio in this whole episode. There's nothing to do with his ex like happening here. That I thought might come back up again. Not so. So meanwhile, throughout all of this, by the way, because again, this is something that's happening because of Petra's wedding, Petra and her agreement to marry Milos is like baffling everybody. And Jane is asking her like, what the hell is going on? I saw the way that you were in the stairwell when you thought he was back and how scared you were of him. I don't buy it that you're like, you know, what is happening here? So we then see a flashback of her playing the violin in the street. She's busking. And her mother is being her hype man, helping everybody to give her tips and whatnot. And Milos comes up and says, I've been watching you play a few months now. You're good, but you're in need of an upgrade. A violin as lovely as you. And she's telling the story to Jane. And she says it was a handcrafted Guarneri. A big step up from my bit, and more valuable than my bit. And in the subtitles, it says bit, BYT equals apartment. We were happy once until my mother started making up all those lies about him cheating. He never cheated. And now that I know the truth, I think maybe we'll be happy again. I want to admit something about this scene, you guys, because I'm watching her and she's like talking to Jane, but she's been sucking on this lollipop for nausea, I think. There's a funny bit where she's like, Jane, did you ever get sick when you were pregnant? And Jane says no. And she's like, of course you didn't. Because I think she just sees Jane as this perfect sort of specimen, you know. But I think her tongue was blue. So, because she's talking like with a weirdly closed mouth in that scene, and I think her tongue was blue and she was trying to hide it. But anyway, this is what she's telling Jane, and Jane says, I think maybe you should go see Magda. If Milos is holding something over her, she would know. So he goes to see Magda, but she doesn't want to speak to anybody but Jane. And so Jane goes in, and we get, guys, this show has not really made jokes about her accent before, but oh my God, it was so funny. So let's see. Petra is marrying Milos, and she starts laughing, Petra's mom, and says, you're lying. And she says, it's true. And she seems scared that we wanted to help her. Can you think of anything Milos would be holding over her? And I love this. Magda could think of a few possibilities. And we get these bullet points on the screen. 1, Weaver holding hostage. And this is spelled with V's. 2, Weaver covering up that I pushed your granny downstairs. 3, we faked medical papers to explain why I wasn't in wheelchair no more. I swear to God, you guys, these kinds of jokes really get to me. I find them so fucking funny. Petra says you made up stories that he was cheating. Why would you do that? First, I had mind open, even though he acted like a stalker. And we see her like introducing him to her 7 years ago. I followed your daughter's music all over the city before we even met. I will never forget when I saw her playing my favorite piece, and to find the musician even more beautiful than the music. And when he says that, she stops him and sort of says, no, that's a viola piece. And you can see Magda sort of like looking around and being like, hold on a second. Like she's turning towards them with a suspicious expression. Cousin Dagmar, she's in trouble. She's stuck in Budapest, lost her wallet. I need 2 million Hungarian forints. Cash preferred, thank you. And Milos says, that's not your cousin. It's me. My side business is internet scam. I like to prank, but also make money. So him saying I was following her all over the place and she played my favorite piece, but it was a viola piece. Viola. Is he just lying about liking her music? Was he just, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess that's it. He's obsessed with her for her appearance, maybe, and decides to lie about caring about the music. But yeah, so Magda's telling her, you should be very, 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 very what? Not very, 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 very. I'm still not following. Very, very. Oh, very wary. That's what I said. Very, very. You guys, this is so dumb. I swear to God. I'm so like, I don't know. I was so startled by how funny I found this. Like I genuinely did. Oh, and they play it so straight. It's so good. I will tell you how you can help my daughter. And Petra, of course, is not happy to hear this. And she says, Milos is an internet criminal. Rafael is downstairs with him. So, I love this. He goes up to him and says, I want to talk. And he says, Milos responds, talk or duel? To which Rafael understandably responds, duel? But he thinks this is a positive, like, oh, I want to duel you. And he stands and says, guns or knives? What are you talking about? Oh, you were kidding. Me too. This guy is so bonkers. You know, you guys, writing in a character who's like an abusive ex, but making him zany isn't an easy ask. It's really like there's a tightrope they're walking here. And I'm not sure they always nail it, but I can't help but be kind of won over by it. So Jane, you know, she has these files. She says, download his files and copy them over him for whatever he's holding over you. You don't have to tell me, just use it. And Petra says, you don't have to do this, Jane. I'll keep him away from Matteo. And Jane says, I actually kind of care about you, Petra. And I don't want you to marry a psycho. So Petra, looking uncertain, takes the files and she looks very moved. But then, a little bit later, after this whole thing, Milos comes in and he has a new violin for her. And he says, I know you sold yours to come here, but it was a travesty. You haven't played in so long. And she's very moved in the moment. Again, there's all this like, oh, everybody cares about me more than I thought. However, when she stops and looks at it, she realizes that when she was telling the story to Jane about the type of violin she had been given, she called it a Guarneri when it was a Connor. And the one that he gave her was a Guarneri. So he got that from the conversation with Jane, which means that he has her apartment bugged. And thus she has to play things in such a way that while he's listening in, it sounds like she is going along with everything for like in truth. I'm so glad that there's this little slip up and she was able to figure this out. And considering how controlling and bonkers he is, it makes a lot of sense that he would be doing this. So she tells Jane, I'm marrying him because he's rich. And please don't repeat that. Although I may finally be rich enough not to care. But I appreciate that you cared the 2% to come and tell me and, you know, try and talk me out of this. Thank you. It's more than I deserve. And Jane says if there's anything that you need help with. And she says, yes, there is one thing. And she is wearing this outfit, this like really, really traditional outfit to get married in. It is one hell of a getup because when Jane first comes in, it's it looks like she's wearing a very traditional sort of like white ball gown. But once you actually see her walking down the aisle, that was clearly like the underdress. And she's got a whole other overdress and everything going on. So we have a sort of interesting intercut thing between her marrying Milos, like their wedding, and Jane and the altercation with Michael and Rafael in the hallway outside. Michael is being, I think he was suspended. I don't know if he got fired yet because he later on actually has to hand in his gun and badge. And he makes it sound like this guy cost me my job here. But apparently he hadn't been entirely fired yet. But this fight, the two of them, like Michael is so enraged and he actually punches Rafael and it's like a brutal fight. Like there is glass breaking all over the place. Michael like is the first to punch and a piece of glass goes flying and it turns out that Mateo in his little baby carrier got cut. And of course, I knew as soon as this happened, oh, this is going to be that Jane doesn't want to be with Michael because he doesn't know how to control himself and the whole thing. Understandably, though, Jane is still believing Michael's accusation against Rafael. And I couldn't even like be mad at her because I also believed it. You know, I really did. Michael doesn't have any real evidence here. He just thinks, oh, Rafael must have heard over the baby monitor and been affecting that he didn't. So then later we see Michael and he breaks into his captain's office and opens the Sinrostro file to watch the person who testified against him. Testified is the wrong word. He was questioned. And it is another dude named Eric Wu who doesn't he doesn't ring any bells for me. As Michael's watching this and realizing that his accusation against Rafael was totally unfounded, his partner is watching him through the door, and she winds up just snitching on him to his boss that he broke into his office and has him hand in his badge and gun and everything right in front of everybody in a very humiliating moment. And honestly, I wanted Michael to belt this woman in the face. I understand that I shouldn't feel this way because my whole thing is that I hate that cops circle the wagons and have each other's backs when they fucking shouldn't. But the feeling with her isn't that she's trying to do the quote right thing. It just feels like she's a fucking goody two-shoes snitch. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I want to believe that she has motives in feeling like he might be corrupted by Sinrostro and I'm watching out for everybody, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels to me like I'm just trying to get ahead by tattling to the boss. So he has to go to Jane and tell her the truth that he found out it was not Rafael. And like when he tells her, that's when she's like, you have this clouded judgment regarding Rafael, but he's the father of my child, and that's why things can't work between us, which I knew that's where we were going. And frankly, you guys know, like, I knew something was going to happen where she doesn't wind up with Michael, because that's just the way the show goes. She can never actually choose anybody, ultimately, right? But normally I get more annoyed by that because I'm just like, oh, here we go. But I was not totally convinced about her being with Michael to begin with. So I was okay with her deciding to just call the quits on that. But then he gets in his car, and who should be in his car but fucking Nadine with a gun to his head yet again. And she just says, drive. And I was just like, this bitch again. I honestly I'm just sick of her as a character. I think that I don't like her face. She has a weird face. I don't like her acting. I don't feel like she's very convincing and just doesn't really, you know what I mean? And I don't really understand what I'm supposed to think about her based on the fact that Michael is acting like she wasn't coerced. I feel like everything surrounding Nadine, I'm just confused by. So I kind of want her to be taken out of this equation. And if we have to deal with somebody else, then fine, you know? But anyway, so I think that's about everything. I'm just trying to see if there was any little thing I missed. I talked off the top about the whole thing with Alba and Shamara getting stoned by accident. And like, I love that Jane just says, basically, they're pretty annoying, actually, because that's what it's like to be the sober person around people who are drunk or stoned. They are annoying. You know, it's not fun. Everything that they find charming or funny just falls flat because you're not in the state of mind to react the way they're reacting. So it's just an inevitability that it's always sort of tedious. Recently, Owen and I, for Thanksgiving, we took some edible before we went to Thanksgiving with his grandparents. And there were a couple moments where I was like, are we giggling too much? But we were just having a great time for once. And sometimes it can be hard hanging out with family, you know? And afterwards, Owen was like, did we sort of like blow our cover? And I was like, I don't think so. But even if we did, they don't have anything on us. So it's fine. But anyway, all right, I've got to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much for listening, for commissioning these episodes. Appreciate you all so much. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.